And good evening and welcome to the April 29th edition of Sports Talk with Mr. Jim and the Star Lord Chris Pratt. As usual, our Sports Talk program sponsored tonight by Usha's Alterations and Tailoring. She's off of Old Gravoy Road, 558 Gravoy Road. That is the site of the Old Commerce Bank building. Usha's Alterations and Tailoring, 20 plus years of experience. Gentlemen with Alteration and Tailoring, I had them on a Conversations podcast a few months back talking about how Usha got her start actually altering and making clothes for her husband. And she's been around a long time. Every time I've gone in the last month or so, there's been a young lady in there getting her prom dress taken care of, and it's a pleasure to watch Usha work on these prom dresses and gowns. She says she works on 300 to 500 every quarter in March and April, May, and June when prom season hits, and I can believe that. But she's awesome. She's really a perfectionist when it comes to alterations and tailoring. Mention Mr. Jim when you go into her shop, and they'll give you a discount. Her husband's name is Kumar. They'll give you a discount on your alterations of your clothes. 80% of the work Usha does is female lady oriented, but the men also come in. Saw a farmer or some type of a guy in the agriculture with his overalls on, Kyle, about a month ago, and he was getting his overalls taken up. It looked to me like getting the length of his overalls taken up. There's nothing she won't do. She's done an awesome job with my pants. And again, she's available by calling 314-238-4612. They are primary sponsor of Sports Talk with Mr. Jim and the Star Lord Chris Pratt. I want to welcome in tonight, guesting from Prepcast.com, Mr. Kyle Goessler.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate being here.
We appreciate you being here, Kyle. So, Chris, let's go back to last Tuesday night as we wrapped up our Sports Talk program. I believe Daniel Rodier called Winnipeg in 4. You had him in 5, and then Mr. Jim said, "Call me crazy." Kyle, this is exactly how I worded it last week. Call me crazy. I'm going to take the Blues to win these next 4 games to wrap this series up in 6. Halfway home at this point. And all I'm simply saying about tomorrow night, I'm cautiously guarded about this road game tomorrow night. But I honestly feel like, gentlemen, if they execute the game plan of the first 2 games and they come at them in droves, they stay on the net, and they accomplish what they accomplished the first 2 games, I believe they can steal this one tomorrow night and then let the party begin in St. Louis on Friday night with an almost guaranteed Game 6 victory. The one thing I want to avoid in this series, I don't want it to go to Sunday Game 7. That makes me very nervous at this point. So,
what can you say about the 2 home games about the Blues other than they dominated every facet of the game? They found that, I always mispronounce Winnipeg's goalie's last name, but they found he's weak on the glove side. And they exploited that. I mean, putting in all the shots they did, keeping him constantly under pressure, taking Schlafly and the other skill player, their primary scorer, out, just keeping them under wraps. The physicality the Blues came out with, they were playing the team like the team that ended the regular season. The first 2 games in Winnipeg, I mean, there's no other way to say it. They simply got outplayed on most facets of the game. They weren't getting the shots on goal. Winnipeg was just getting shot after shot after shot. But the Blues suddenly just said, okay, we're home. They picked up whatever they needed from being home. And, yeah, it's a brand new series. I do agree that if they split, the game tomorrow and then they come back here and the Blues win, I don't like it going back to Winnipeg. I'd rather the Blues have the chance of winning it here. But if the Blues can figure out that, okay, how do we take the essence of how we play at home and take that on this road game, it's very likely they could win this at home because right now we've got Winnipeg on their heels. I mean, they're getting chippy. They're not liking the physicality, and we took all the advantages they had in games 1 and 2 away from them. So Blues need to capitalize on it. They've got the capabilities of doing it, but again, it's the execution when they're on the road that we just didn't see in games 1 and 2.
Kyle?
I'll follow that up and say game 1 and 2, there was the chances there for us to win. You give up the late goal in game 2 with a minute 30 left, and you end up losing that one where you were 90 seconds away from going to overtime. But like you said, Chris, game 3 and 4 here in St. Louis just flat out dominated them. And Winnipeg getting chippy, trying to get back at us and trying to retaliate. We're just not falling for it. I know we're a young team, but we're playing like seasoned veterans with these young kids like Snuggerud, stepping up, keeping pucks alive late on long shifts for the defense of Winnipeg. You've taken out Scheifele and Connor so far pretty much for this series, other than a couple goals maybe from Connor. Scheifele really hasn't been existent as much. And I think one thing that the Blues have done really well is they're getting 4-line scoring, and they're getting scoring from their defensemen. Winnipeg, they're expecting Scheifele and Connor to lead them to win with the good goaltending from Hellebuck. That has not been the case in this series. In my eyes, the way I see it, realistically, Game 5 could have been a potential clincher for the Blues. Because in Game 1, you remember they were up going into the third period, they collapsed. Game 2, they're tied in the third period, just give up that late goal, and that hurts you. But then you flip the switch, you get 2 days off, Blues players getting to relax in their home city in St. Louis, flip the switch, then the hottest team at home the last 2 months of the season since the Four Nations face-off. And it really proved in games 3 and 4 by scoring 11 goals on 43 shots against Hellebuck. And one thing is, for game 5, that I see being the biggest key is early scoring. If the Blues can put a lot of shots on net within that first 5 to 6 minute range tomorrow night in game 5, and they can find a way to score one, maybe a quick second one, I think they put Winnipeg on notice saying, hey, we don't care that you're the President's Trophy winner. We're here to play. We made a run. We're playing our best hockey now. Winnipeg played their best hockey all season, but it hasn't really shown it so much in the postseason through the first 4 games. So I think that's going to be the biggest key is, can the Blues score early in Game 5 and take that Winnipeg crowd out of it?
They were talking this afternoon on 101. I've got that on the sports station whenever I go to work in the morning, whenever I come home. They were asking themselves who's the MVP of this series at this point, and Benner name came up amongst 2 of them. One person said that they thought it was Cam Fowler with his performance in this series, saying that Benner's been there, done that has become expected of Jordan Binnington when it comes playoff time, that he steps up and he gets the job done. But I would have to say it would be Binnington in my book at this point that has just made some his typical unbelievable saves, stopping shots that these backdoor plays that were beating him earlier in the year because of a lack of defense. He's making those saves on those backdoor plays, unlike he was doing back in the regular season. As I said, I've told my residents that I've spoken to about this series that, again, I'm guarded. Tomorrow night, I'm guarded. I keep calling it a game that we can steal from Winnipeg tomorrow night. In my mind, though, I keep seeing, Kyle and Chris, the same results that we've had those first 2 home games. And we don't have to call him Hollenbeck. We can call him Connor. We can certainly call him Connor. St. Louis Blues fans named him all those 2 games. Just call him Connor. It makes him nervous, folks. It makes him nervous.
Well, and yeah, I mean, now whether Hallenbeck goes back to, he's not going to have the St. Louis crowd base
No.
eating at him. He's going to have his home team. But I think Kyle brought up a good point. He is a different goalie when he gets scored upon early. The first game in St. Louis, we scored. I mean, within like the first 2 minutes of the game, we were already up 2-0.
Two goals, 4 minutes in.
Yeah. So, I mean, we get early goals. He turns into a different goaltender. It starts getting into his head, and, we capitalize on that. And, again, the Blues, when we did our podcast and talking about, before the series even started, that, if we got what we're getting now since the 2 home games, 4 full lines of production, scoring on any of those 4 lines, the defense playing sound, Bennington's going to do his bit, but as Kyle said in the early on, the defense would collapse. Benner can't stop everything if there's no defense in front of him. But as long as we play as we're capable of playing, yes, it is quite possible we take this next game in Winnipeg, we come here, and I would say if we go up 3-2, I would say that you're going to be right, Jim, because until Winnipeg shows they can beat us here, I'm going to say that the Blues could potentially pull this one off. I wouldn't have expected it, only because of, I base everything on what have they done, when we talked about this the first 2 games. In the first 2 games, yes, they played well. It's not like they just went out there and didn't show up, but they weren't playing a full, 90 minutes of hockey. Or 60 minutes of hockey. They were playing well, and then they'd collapse late and allow Winnipeg to steal the game from us. That hasn't been the case the last 2 games. So as long as the Blues play in that capacity, yeah, I'm going to say you're dead on, and I will, I'll be quite impressed that you went on that limb and called it when the writing on the wall wasn't good when you're down 2-0.
Well, Kyle, the Winnipeg media, the Winnipeg beat writers apparently have a tremendous amount of respect for the St. Louis Blues, saying that they didn't expect these games in Winnipeg to be as closely contested as they were, and we weren't at our best. But even the Winnipeg media is saying at this point that, and I think it's been proven, and again, you can call me wrong on this, to my knowledge, there has not been a President's Cup winner that has won the Stanley Cup, or am I incorrect on that one? We've never had
since the President's
Cup
winner has won.
It's been
it's been a while, and it bodes against President's Trophy winners. It's like you do that, but then you get to the postseason, you just collapse, and it's like you did all this work in the regular season. Why didn't it carry over to the postseason? Did a team come in and say you were hungrier and you got outplayed by a hungrier team that had no business beating you 4 games in a series? Is always the good question.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll say a big one is Connor Hellebuck's I'm sure he's been thinking the last couple days, where's his mindset at? I got pulled twice in St. Louis. Where's his mentality? Yeah,
I think he's going to be very nervous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be very nervous tomorrow night. Even playing in front of hometown fans, as you said, Cal, they pulled me not once, they pulled me twice. Maybe it inspires him. I don't see that. I see a man that's going to be very nervous tomorrow night when the shots come his way. I could be wrong. Maybe the whiteout will have something to do with it.
Well,
I don't know.
I could see it happening.
Yeah.
I could see it happening that he comes out and he gives up a fluky goal. He might give up a fluky goal on the first one, and then he gets down and allows another 2-point in, and you're down 2-0, 3-4 minutes into the game. And the way St. Louis has been playing, that defense has been solid with Parayko and Fowler on the back, as well as Falks giving you some production as well. You're leading the playoffs right now in hits. You're showing that our physicality has been winning us games too, because we're frustrating Winnipeg, and like you said, Chris, it's forcing them to be chippy. They're trying to get us to retaliate and take silly penalties, and we just haven't fallen for it. So I think that's where you score those early goals, you play that physical game, you've held the Shifley, Connor, Iapalo line in check for the most part of this series. You got unlucky with Connor scoring that one that it took an unfortunate bounce. Bennington didn't have a chance. But then after that, you scored 5 unanswered with the Tyler Tucker rocket from the point being the game winner. Now, hopefully, Tucker's healthy to play. I've not heard anything about his knee injury. I know he wasn't putting any weight on it.
I was just going to ask what you just brought up at this point. I'm hearing Tucker day to day with his injury. Did the Blues call up what I've heard today from a guy at work, not the greatest source in the world, but he said the Blues called up a third goaltender today?
I have not heard that myself, actually.
And they called up one other person just in case. I'm figuring that that Suter would go tomorrow night. I wouldn't mind seeing him back in there in place of Tucker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if Tucker can't go.
Mean,
yeah.
You're going to get some veteran experience with Suter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and it's going to be interesting to see if Tucker goes tomorrow. I hope that he has the ability to. He's been playing really well on that back line, right? I'm not. Who's he paired up with?
That's isn't
he
it Falk?
With Letty? Or is,
yeah, I think
it's Letty. Okay, yeah. And Letty himself hasn't had a bad series, has he? The old man hasn't had a bad series.
I mean, you're getting production from Cam Fowler. Who would have thought that Cam Fowler would have put up a 5-point playoff game to break the defenseman record for points for the Blues?
What a great deal! What a great deal that was pulled off by Army on that one. Did you see that coming? I sure didn't. Just snatched him away from Anaheim.
Well, Anaheim had given up on him. You know, he wasn't getting the minutes. They weren't getting what they felt the production out of someone, you know, and they gave up on him. So, yeah, Army took advantage of that situation, and he's been nothing but stellar for us. And, you know, I mean, it just shows. Maybe a change, you know, sometimes you get that player gets that change of scenery, and that's all he needs. And that change of scenery and just lights that fire. And, you know, you get a guy who is playing, you know, lights out. He's being productive in all phases of the game and has really become an asset to the team.
I'm going to say that might be one of the bigger trades this year that just completely flew under the radar.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching the Winter Classic, and I think that was like the first time I was like, oh, wait, we have Cam Fowler? When did this happen?
Yeah.
That's how much it flew under the radar when we picked up Fowler. And Army looks like a genius now.
Yeah. But that was at the point where the Blues weren't even in playoff contention. And, yeah, it was like, okay, well, this is a guy who's underperforming with Anaheim, so why are we even concerned about it? He got little fanfare. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, yeah, that's the guy we got, and he's doing okay. I don't see a downside to this. Because, I mean, he just came right in and just, you know, began playing as what I'm assuming Anaheim wanted him to, but he was just never given the full opportunity.
So the question tomorrow night is, if the Blues get that 2-0 lead, is that it for Connor early? Does he get pulled by his coach saying, I can't afford any more goals from the Blues? Would it be a 3? Would it be a 3-0 lead pulling Connor? Or do they stay with him to another barrage, assuming that happens tomorrow night?
I would think it would really depend on whether or not Winnipeg is – what kind of offense is Winnipeg giving? You know, if they're getting shots on goal, yeah, I think they pull him early because he's shown in the last 2 games that it's not going to stop at 2. You know, like I watched the game on Thursday when the Blues put up 3 in the first period, nothing in the second, and then went on to score 4. Of course, I went to bed by then because I had to work the next day. But
sure.
You know, watching them put up, you know, or hearing that they put up 4, and then, you know, I was in district meetings with the Elks, so I didn't really see much of the game. But you know, you saw Winnipeg come out with the early 1-0 lead, Blues tie it, and then go on, you know, just go on that scoring spree. So Hallenbrock has shown that, okay, he lets in goals. It's not going to stop at 1 or 2 as of late. And if I'm Winnipeg's coach, I'm going to pull him early because I don't want to come back to St. Louis with a potential game clincher for the Blues riding on that game.
Yeah, I agree with that one there. I think if they get down 2-3-0, but that third goal's real late in the first period, then I think you see Comrie start the second and see where it goes from there. If Connor's not getting help from the defense, but the offense might be there, then I think you see him stick around a little bit more. But like you said, Chris, if that offense isn't showing up because they're expecting Kyle Connor, Shifley, and Iafallo really to lead the way scoring with that top line, and they're not providing anything, then yeah, I think Hellebuck gets pulled pretty early in that game if they fall down 2-3-0 pretty quick.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to let everybody know that, again, Sports Talk tonight is being also brought to you by Mr. Cam Hamilton at Off the Hook Embroidery. 35 years serving our country in the U.S. Army did Kim Hamilton, and he started Off the Hook Embroidery. I received my satin baseball jacket from Kim over the weekend. I also ordered one of his belts. What do they call those? Ratchet belts. He has the black ratchet belt with his ace and the golf marker logo on there. Ordered one of his belts, and of course, Mr. Hadaholic here. I ordered one of his black hats as well with the spade and the golf marker logo on there. The jacket, I didn't expect anything less. Turned out spectacularly. So I've got a jacket, Chris, with our logo on the back of it. Quite happy with the work that Kim Hamilton has done. Kim Hamilton also sells cigars. He's a cigar aficionado. Both he and his wife knows cigars and smoke them. He told me that he carries 300 brands of cigars in his inventory. Does have a vehicle that they occasionally use to have smokers in one of his vehicles, but his cigars are available at info@odhcigars.com, and the embroidery is Off the Hook. That's OFFDAH. Excuse me, let me try that again. Slow that down. It's OFFDAHOOKLLC.com. That's for the embroidery side of things. Kim shot me a picture last week, gentlemen. He had 7 boxes of embroidered items that this man had worked on for several different golf tournaments that he is involved in doing embroidery for. He is located down in Wesley Chapel, Florida. Obviously, in Florida, there are golf tournaments going on all the time, and he has done a lot of work. I think he said that those boxes had about $7,000 or $8,000 worth of generated revenue from that embroidery order that he had. He's also available at 1-443-226-1206. Mention Mr. Jim in the when you go onto his online shop, and I think he's giving you 10 or 20% off of your order, whether you order a belt, one of his caps. He's got a spectacular golf line, Kyle, of a bunch of different colored sport shirts with that Off the Hook logo on there with the spade and the golf ball in behind it. It's Kim Hamilton, and the name of his company is Off the Hook Embroidery. OffTheHookLLC.com for the embroidery. Once again, on the cigar side, it's info@odhcigars.com. Chris Pratt, as promised, thoughts, sir, on the NFL draft?
So this may come off as a little bit of a rant, but, in just the coverage that ESPN puts on this draft, I can't call it anything other than a big pile of steaming crap, to be perfectly honest. How Mel Kiper has a job is beyond me, because this guy is somebody who was wrong on the draft more often than he's correct. Really what I wanted to focus on was the whole big up-to-do about the Shedeur Sanders not going until the 5th round, and how ESPN is blaming the NFL for collusion and everything else. and simply not talking about the obvious. And before I go there, I'm going to at least say that let's look at Brady Cook, the Mizzou quarterback, and Shedeur Sanders. Two guys that come out in the same draft. Both of them, Brady Cook was, at least before the college season started, was at least talked about as a possible dark horse as a Heisman candidate because of what his performance in his junior year. And
Right.
of course, Shedeur Sanders, because he's Deion's son, all the hype was on him. But look, I look at both of them as kind of being the same caliber of quarterback. They both had years that, they had highlight moments, but ultimately they kind of had the same year. They were disappointing. Shedeur Sanders has one win against a ranked opponent, and they beat TCU earlier in the year when they were ranked, and they beat them by a field goal. Otherwise, you have a guy who, and I question whether or not Shedeur Sanders would have been drafted by a major program because he's been sheltered by his dad throughout his entire college career. Brady Cook had two meaningful bowl game wins. Granted, now Mizzou didn't win, but the reason I say compare what kind of where they were is ESPN. It's hilarious that within certain quarterbacks, depending on who you are, they will blame the team for being bad around you and you being the highlight of that team. But yet for other college quarterbacks, whether your team wins or loses, they place that on the quarterback's shoulder, which is hypocrisy in its own. So ESPN, like I said, you get all of the various gossip columnists, because I don't want to call them sports analysts because they're not. They keep perpetuating the same stories so they can talk about it day after day after day and not say anything of quality. They're just putting quantity out there. The whole reason that Shedeur Sanders didn't get drafted early on is because of the whole media hype because he's Deion Sanders' son. Because if it was any other quarterback on any major program that didn't play a meaningful bowl game, they had a 9-4 record, but they played 3 ranked teams, lost 2 of those games, and the rest of them were against a bunch of patsy teams that basically you could pad stat. Because if you're not playing quality opponents, you're not, what good is it? And so I don't know of any other college quarterback who had a 1-13 or 1-14 total record against ranked teams that would be deserving of a first round draft slot. And again, going back to he's Deion Sanders' son, so the whole media hype surrounding this and why ESPN is not covering this is just pathetic. Because again, what quarterback with his resume would be worthy of a number one, or first round draft pick? Deion, and then, they don't cover that Deion was saying, well, there's certain teams I won't allow him to play for. So what, again, Deion is granted, I don't think he's the best cornerback ever. I maybe put him in the top 5, but he's not. I think he's, again, it's the media hype because he's all, the flash and all that, but I'd rather have a cornerback who could tackle rather than just go ball hawking. So, Deion goes out there and hurts his son's chances of getting drafted because he's running his mouth. Shedeur Sanders is already acting like he's a Hall of Fame player, and he hasn't played down 1 for the NFL yet. I see a kid who simply is going to be an NFL bust because he's already got an attitude issue. He already assumes he's going to be the starter before he beat anybody out. And honestly, from what I saw of his college, performances, there's nothing about his college game that tells me he's ready to be an NFL quarterback. A lot of his game is dunks, the running back screen or just doing screen plays. Doesn't have the strongest of arms. But, the whole thing is with ESPN that just irked me is you get Ryan Clark and some of the other, gossip columnists out there saying collusion, it's racism, and any other stupid comment they can. But Cam Ward, a black quarterback from Miami who played a meaningful bowl game, was clearly the best quarterback in the draft, went number 1.
And number 1.
So, I don't understand how ESPN can stand and just continue this hypocrisy after hypocrisy. To me, it's just, I don't know, if there is a if there was, a means of just wiping the slate clean and just getting rid of their people, I think they just need to start from scratch, because they're not talking about sports. They're bringing in people's personal lives. They're doing anything but talking about sports, just because they can continue this same narrative over and over again. To me, this draft could have been, it was the Shedeur Sanders show, because I think really they all knew that he wasn't getting drafted right away, because again, his last name is Sanders, and it's the only reason people talked about it. Otherwise, what on his resume deserved him being talked about ahead of, or more than, Cam Ward or some of the other quarterbacks that were, viewed as better prospects? Because I didn't see any scouting report on Shedeur Sanders that told me that he was a top level prospect. Outside of Cam Ward, even like Jackson Dart, some of the other guys had question marks because they needed some further development. I agree with that. I thought they were fair assessments. I thought Dan, was that Orlovsky? He was a former quarterback in the NFL. I thought he gave about the most fair analysis on Shedeur Sanders, and that was just he does a lot of dink and dive plays where he'll set up screens, but his arm is suspect as to how strong his arm's going to be. And when you don't play against the top caliber teams and you have a very soft schedule, he was trying to figure out what everybody else was seeing, other than they're helping Deion son get to the NFL, which is, I think, ultimately what this whole thing was about. So I needed a little rant, because I've been doing this for a little while, because the draft coverage could have been so much better, because you could have, there was almost nothing said of the Heisman runner-up Genty from, what was it, Idaho, I believe he's from one of the
Boise State,
one of the teams up north. The guy who nearly broke Barry Sanders' college rushing record, to me should have been the Heisman winner. Not taking anything away from Travis Hunter, but because the guy did play both ways the entire season. I thought Deion was doing him a disservice, though, because he could have been injured at a higher propensity because he was playing both sides of the ball. But I can't take away from the guy who did a good job playing both sides of the ball. I thought the draft analysis on him was fair, because he's not an A receiver, he's not an A quarterback, and for him to even kind of have that Deion attitude of, well, I'm going to play both ways, and if a team doesn't let me do that, I'm not going to play for them. You don't have any leverage to be able to tell an NFL team what you are and what you aren't going to do. They're not going to do that. They're not going to allow you to play both ways, because they don't want to increase your chance of injury. And when you're playing in the pros, if you go to play both ways, that's how you get injured. That's why, Woodson wasn't able to do that. That's why a lot of the other guys who had the capacity to play both ways weren't allowed to, because they didn't want to risk one of their star players getting hurt. Deion did him a disservice. Now, thankfully, it paid off because he didn't get hurt. But, I just hope that they stop the whole Deion Sanders hype train, because it's not good for college sports. You're putting a program that, yes, he is helping rebuild that program. I'm not going to take anything away from that. Colorado has vastly improved under his leadership. He's getting players who are buying into his system. But he has to do a better job with his players, and they need to stop criticizing other coaches, the NFL, and things, just because the NFL sees it for what it is, and if ESPN doesn't like it, they can just make any allegations they want. I mean, I'm at the point now where I don't even watch ESPN anymore. I don't listen to a lot of the talk shows, because I just can't stand listening to them. They just make me cringe, and I wish they had a phone number I could call in. I'd blast them, but you don't have that opportunity.
Kyle Goessler, you've had the chance to listen to some of this feedback. Your takes on the 2025 NFL Draft?
First of all, Chris, I agree. Mel Kiper having a job is hilarious. I can't stand him. I think he's been a joke for years. And I'll admit, I followed the draft, but I didn't watch one single minute of it, because you get all these columnists that are coming up with these allegations that just sound so absurd, it makes it laughable. I knew Shedeur was not going day one. from the jump. He was not very impressive to me at all. He has never been very impressive to me at all. I think it's funny that he was at his house in a room that he built himself with a sign that said legendary. First of all, you were 13-12 in 2 years at Colorado? What is legendary that you did? The fact that he has his number retired at Colorado already. Same with Travis Hunter. Don't get me wrong, Travis Hunter, I think, will turn out just fine if he picks one side of the ball. He's not going to play two sides of the ball in the NFL. He's just not big enough and strong enough right now to do that. I think Jacksonville says, hey, you're going to play one side of the ball. That's it. You're not playing any other side. If they decide to go against that and have him play both sides of the ball, I think you get 2 solid seasons out of him before his body starts to deteriorate from playing both sides of the ball. And then they say, okay, you played 2 seasons as a wide receiver and as a corner in the NFL. You look way older than what you are because that's just too much strain on your body to do that in the NFL with guys that are bigger, stronger, and faster than you. Don't get me wrong. Travis Hunter was a good player. I can respect that. I can respect him playing both sides of the ball in college football for Colorado and the Big 12. Not an easy conference to do that. If he does it in the SEC, same thing. Not an easy conference to do it in. I think if he's at a bigger school in the SEC or the Big 10, I think we would have seen Travis Hunter exposed a little bit more on the ball, and we wouldn't be seeing him as a number 2 pick. We might see him as a day 2 pick, in my opinion. But the Shedeur Sanders thing and them having their numbers retired when the Colorado Buffaloes team of the 1990 national championship team don't even have their numbers retired, I think that's just absurd. I think that's just laughable that 2 guys that played on a team for 2 years under Deion that went 13-12 and, like you said, beat TCU as their only ranked win. They should have beat a terrible Stanford team. I think that was last year. And they get up 40 points and ended up losing that game. I just don't see how Shedeur was a day 1 pick in anyone's eyes. Day 2, I can maybe see, but even that's a little bit of a stretch. I think day 3 would have made the most sense. Travis being a day 1 pick, first round. Yeah, I can agree with that. But number 2, maybe not.
I did a little. Go ahead, please, Kyle. Go ahead.
I just think there was guys that should have got a chance that could have been a first round pick. I think if Luther Burden's numbers would have been what they were last year, I think Luther Burden goes top 10 in the NFL draft to any one of those teams. To get Luther Burden, yeah, I think he's going to have to bulk up a little bit in the NFL. Same with Travis Hunter. He's going to have to bulk up too. But Luther Burden probably more than Travis Hunter. Luther Burden can show, hey, I can return, I can punt return, I can kick return, I can run the ball, I can catch the ball. But I think where Luther Burden's going to be better is he's more elusive than Travis Hunter. So you have the ability to throw that short pass, and then Luther Burden can just take off and run. Travis Hunter, you're going to look at him more as that short game receiver, but he's going to get wrapped up quickly because they're going to spot him out, especially playing on a team like Jacksonville with him, who he is. He's got a flashy name. He's a Heisman winner. They're going to bottle him up pretty quick. Luther Burden, I think he's going to fly under the radar a little bit this year because of where he's at. I think if Luther Burden would have ended up on a better team with a top wide receiver that can produce, he would put up some good numbers that would just fly under the radar from everybody.
Who did Luther Burden end up at? Who did Luther Burden end up going to?
Bears.
He was a Bears
The Bears?
draft pick.
Yeah.
He was the 39th for the Bears.
And I had thought, or when I was reading, and I do agree with you, Burton, and that's why I brought up Brady Cook, because when Brady Cook got hurt and he didn't have the year, so Burton's numbers weren't as good. But I thought that people saw enough of Luther Burton. I thought he was going to be a first round, because this wasn't a very stock receiver draft, and Burton proved that he could play in big moments. He could play and shine in those big games. I thought Green Bay was going to take a chance at him, but they went with the
Golden
receiver
from
from
Texas.
I think. Yeah, they went with him instead of Burton. But I thought Burton would do well with that younger receiving core in Green Bay. Just he would get a chance to shine, because they like to run those 4 receiver sets where you're forcing your opponents to play a zone defense, and Luther Burton, he knows you're as I try to talk gibberish. What you said, Kyle, I completely agree with. He is that elusive receiver that can catch a ball in space, and then he knows how to be able to outmaneuver the secondary and make big yards or take it to the house. But we'll have to see what the Caleb Williams evolution is. That was another guy I thought that wasn't going to pan out, and I'm not saying that he doesn't have the skills. I think his mentality was off, because he was talking about wanting to be an owner and all the other stuff that he kept coming out with, or that he wanted to be paid so that he was a partial owner. I forget what it was, but he was asking for ridiculous sums of money, and then when he goes out there, he doesn't put up. I'm sure it's a forgettable season for him, because it didn't turn out as well for the Bears. But I can't put that all on him, because the Bears didn't have an offensive line to really protect him. But now that they've made the moves that they have, how does he respond now that he's got at least one All-Pro at guard, and they are making strides to protect him, and they're giving him weapons? So, I mean, it's up to Caleb Williams as to what he's going to do now that the Bears are doing what they need to do in building around him. I mean, the guy was, I can't take anything away from him. In college, he played well. It's just, what soured me on him was him running his mouth, saying, I want to be the first, $1 billion NFL player. I want this. I want this. And it's like, I don't understand why these kids coming out of college now are so self-entitled. Before you ever play a down in the NFL, you think you're deserving of all this stuff. It's like, no, you get your big payday when you show that you can go and there's a reason Patrick Mahomes has everything he does. It's because he's proven that he can go out there and win a Super Bowl. How the NFL, and I guess this is bringing up another topic at conversation, but I don't understand how Trevor Lawrence and some of these other quarterbacks get the paydays they do when they, Trevor Lawrence hasn't really shown that he's, capable of leading a team into the playoffs. I'm not saying he can't and that he hasn't. I believe they did make the playoffs.
1 year?
Yeah, I think they made it 1 year as a wild card.
A couple of years ago, in his first year, I think.
He has the potential, but he hasn't got there. Burrow, I can understand, because he's come in, and the reason that Cincinnati was at least competitive this year is because he pretty well willed it. Because every game Cincinnati was in was a shootout, because they didn't have a defense to speak of.
They haven't had a defense in a couple years.
Right, and the offense is stacked, and Burrow. I mean, the guy can go out and play, but it just amazes me that these quarterbacks get all this money, and they have yet to prove. I mean, the guys. Like I said, you know that you're going to get what you're going to get out of Mahomes. And I will even go as far as Baltimore's quarterback, whose name is escaping me right now. Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
He shows that, they can be AFC North winners. They can win that division, but you don't know what you're going to get out of him in the playoffs.
Yeah, he hasn't shown he can win.
Yeah, I mean, and even at that, during the regular season, he's one of the top 3 quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback, when you factor in his rushing totals and what he can do with his arm. But until he wins meaningful playoff games, again, I mean, there's very few quarterbacks in the league right now that have shown that they can go and take you the distance. And
the notes, Chris, that I was able to pull up today, probably similar notes that you both have on Saunders. A couple of disturbing notes on him. Noticed he did not play in the Senior Bowl. Didn't show his talents in the Senior Bowl. Did I also see that he skipped the NFL Combine as well?
Yep. He did private workouts with players. But yeah, he didn't do anything to make teams think that he's not the head case that he is. Because again, if you're going to circumvent the Combine, you're not going to play in the Senior Bowl, you're not going to do the things to showcase your talent, and you're going to say, well, I'm going to work out with, he did a workout with Cam Ward where, he was promoting his new legendary, product line more than anything else. But, you're telling NFL teams that you're not good enough for me. I'm not going to do what you want me to. But yet it's good enough for every other NFL prospect that's coming into the draft. And again, ESPN doesn't want to mention anything about that, how, this kid comes off as so arrogant, so self-entitled, but, it's simply what it is. I mean, you call a spade at this point.
My notes,
draft status.
My notes, Chris, you won't be happy with because they did come off of the ESPN draft page, but from what I pulled together, again, hurriedly today to get ready for this tonight, with Sanders, it was also mentioned as well that as he goes onto this roster, he comes in as the fourth quarterback on the roster right now, projected at number 4. So for Sanders, there's a fight ahead, even in minicamp, to try.
I think they might have 5.
All right, 5. Maybe have him at 5.
I think it's Deshaun, Joe,
yes,
Gabriel. They got Kenny. They traded for Kenny Pickett, and then Dylan Gabriel. So they have a quarterback room of 5.
And Kenny Pickett, I mean, I am very little to say about Kenny Pickett. How many teams is this for Kenny Pickett in 4 years? Is this
3.
a half a dozen? 3? Just 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because I know he played
Philly,
back
Pittsburgh.
Eagles, Pittsburgh. Yeah, so this is his 3rd team.
Yeah, 3 teams in 5 years since he's been drafted.
Yeah, and the only reason that Deshaun Watson's still on the team is nobody else is willing to take that contract or even deal with Deshaun Watson. But I don't think Deshaun Watson's the starter because whatever magic he had when he first came into the league is gone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so do you go with Flacco, who is pretty much now an immobile quarterback? He can't run. Yeah, he can hit receivers. He's got the experience. Or do you go, give one of the rookies the chance? But I mean, I would still say that, if I'm the Browns and you've already got a lot of, I mean, granted now I was amazed when, my name just escaped me, their star defensive end. At the end of the season, he said he was wanting out of Cleveland, and then he ends up signing. And now, granted, he got a monster deal, but I was really amazed. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is do they really want to give the spot automatically to Sanders, or are they going to simply make him earn it? And do they give the same shot to Gabriel, or do they give it to a veteran? Because you probably have your best chance of winning with, I hate to say it, but Flacco or Pickett, if either of them can then take this step and be that quarterback and lead that team. I don't think, if I'm looking at it, I don't see that Gabriel, I don't know much about him, so I don't want to say he can't. I don't think Sanders is a leader. I don't think he's got the capability of going into an NFL locker room and assuming that position, especially, and I'm looking for the guy's name now. I can't believe I couldn't remember. He's one of the best
defensive. Garrett.
Myles Garrett, thank you. Yes.
Garrett, okay, yeah.
That's the leader of that team. And if Shedeur goes in there and starts rubbing Garrett the wrong way, Garrett's going to handle that situation. Garrett's going to put him down like the little kid he is. Because you don't take one of the best defensive ends in football, and especially if you're the Cleveland Browns, you made him happy enough to stay when he was demanding to be released.
I was able to catch a little bit of 101's interview yesterday morning. They had John Gruden on. John Gruden is actually a Blues fan. Can you believe that? John Gruden is actually a St. Louis Blues fan, but he's going to be in town, I guess, Friday night. The Blues are in town. The Battlehawks are playing down at the Dome, and the Cardinals are playing baseball. But John Gruden was talking about the NFL draft, and John Gruden's take on the NFL draft, I don't care what position you got drafted in the NFL draft, whether you were drafted first or you were the last person picked. He said, in my book, I never looked at the draft as any analysis for anything. When you were drafted, you came onto the field, you put your uniform on, and I knew exactly when you came onto the field whether or not you had studied our playbook and you were ready to go. Your draft position was irrelevant to me. Can you play in the NFL or can you not play in the NFL? Is how John Gruden viewed all these NFL drafts. He said the drafts mean absolutely nothing to him. It's when you physically get on the field, you put on the pads, do you perform or do you not perform? It's as simple as that.
I'm going to go ahead and say this, but I think Cleveland getting Mason Graham at 5, I think their front four with Garrett and Graham just got even better. Adding Graham to it and then you keep Myles Garrett, I think their defense will actually keep them in some games because, I mean, yeah, you're going to stop one of those two, but you can't stop them both on every single play. And then Mason Graham, he might have been one of the best run stoppers in the country this past year on the defensive side of the ball for a terrible Michigan. But I think Cleveland with Graham and Garrett as your main two defenders up front, that's going to be very interesting. I think it's going to pan out well for them, but it's just a matter of the quarterback position. Where do you go? You got 5 guys. Like you said, Chris, nobody's going to take Deshaun Watson with that contract, and he's kind of a head case himself in his own way. Shador's a head case. Dylan Gabriel, he played at 3 different schools in his career. He put up numbers, yeah, he did. He had a very good Oregon offense this year. Just ran into Ohio State team that was hot at the time. But I mean, he still put up pretty solid numbers in his career. I think we see Dylan Gabriel get a chance before Shador. I truly believe that. I think
Pickett wins the starting job at quarterback and then Gabriel backs him up?
No. I think Flacco and then Gabriel backs up Flacco and Pickett ends up being 3. I don't think Kenny Pickett has shown that he can be a good starter in the NFL. He's had his opportunities with the Steelers. He showed that he was not worthy of being a first-round pick when he did get drafted out of Pitt. Yeah, he had a good year that got him into the first-round pick out of Pitt. The numbers just aren't there for him. I think Dylan Gabriel has a better chance of being the backup week 1 with Flacco being the starter than Kenny Pickett being the starter and Dylan Gabriel backing him up.
There is one other story that apparently has come out of this draft, and it doesn't involve a drafted player. The other story that I noticed before we went on air tonight, I guess the Pittsburgh Steelers seem pretty focused upon the fact that they will eventually, I see Kyle nodding his head, he knows what I'm about to say, that Aaron Rodgers will eventually end up in Pittsburgh and be running that offense. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for the Steel Curtain?
I think it's a good thing.
Hard to say.
Well, I will say it's good only because what are their other options?
They did take Will Howard in the 6th round.
Right, but I mean, again, you've got a guy now. I mean, granted, I was gonna with what James said about the draft. I completely agree because look at how many number 1, or first round draft picks end up being busts, and then you get guys in the later round who turn into, MVP caliber players. But as of right now, the Steelers have to do something because they've always been on the cusp. They've made the wild card. They're making the playoffs, but they're getting there on their defense. They're not getting there on their offense. And they haven't had a quarterback to speak of because Russell Wilson, for whatever reason, he's lost the magic he had in Seattle. He shows glimpses of it, but then he will cost them games by throwing picks. Trying to remember the Justin Fields. Again, you don't know what you're going to get out of Justin Fields.
I believe he's a Jet now. But
yeah, he did go to the Jets. That's right.
But still, he didn't show enough.
Russell Wilson also left, if I remember correctly. He's no longer a Steeler.
He's a Giant now, isn't he? He's quarterback in the Giants.
Yeah, he's a Giant.
Yeah. So, the Steelers have nobody at quarterback, and you have to have somebody with NFL experience to be able to come in. And if you want to have any hopes of having a decent season, and let's face it, Rodgers also understands that if he does take that position, he's going to be a mentor for whatever young quarterbacks they have.
Oh, gosh.
And
mentor.
Yeah,
mentor.
Well, can you think of anyone that would be able to help better prepare someone? Because he's not. He understands that his window is closed. He's not. If he signs a 1-year deal, I think that Achilles injury took more out of Rodgers than he's willing to admit.
Mm-hmm.
So he knows his playing time is minimal at best. So he has, he knows he's going to be able to groom somebody and get them. But, like what I said, and, the Steelers have always been one of those teams because I love NFL teams that play hard-nosed defense. And, I just don't see that, what other options are there out there? If there's any quarterbacks that they could go out and potentially sign, they're not going to be that quarterback that's going to make a difference to what you had last season. And you gave up on the guys you had last season. So, it's probably the best option that they have.
I will say this about Aaron Rodgers, and I say this without pausing at this point. Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers' worst enemy. His mouth never stops, and it gets him into trouble everywhere he goes. I'll never forget. The man comes off the sideline, and his head coach, who he got his head coach fired, I don't care what he says, but he comes off the sideline, his head coach is ready to high-five him, and Rodgers walked right by him. Robert walked right by Robert, saying didn't do anything, and I said, Aaron Rodgers, the problem is you. It's nobody else. It's exclusively you are a cancer right now on any team that you come aboard for because you can't keep your mouth under control.
I'm going to go out and say it. That's a lot of these young kids' issues, too.
Yeah, it is.
It is. Run their mouth. And it comes out with the NIL. The NIL has ruined so much with the college athletics that these guys think, oh, I'm entitled to a big contract right out the gate. I deserve it. But your numbers don't speak for it. You're just getting paid in college. Like you said, Pat Mahomes has shown, hey, I can win it. I can win it. His first year he came in as a starter, what'd he do? He led him to the AFC Championship game. If not for the offsides call that he can't control, yeah, they're probably in the Super Bowl that year. Yeah. But Pat Mahomes is different than these guys because he's kept his mouth shut. He just goes out, he plays the game. He does what he can do, he controls what he controls. And that's been very successful. Not to mention, he's also had one of the best coaches in the NFL for the last, 2+ decades in Andy Reid.
And you look at
that was one of the best decisions the Chiefs made.
You look at the quarterback, Kyle and Chris, of the Washington Commanders, Jaden Daniels. They become one of my new favorite teams. Jaden Daniels is in that training area. He's in that meeting room at 4 o'clock in the morning, analyzing tape as to what he did right, as to what he did wrong. And when he goes back to the bench, he's given that iPad, He makes sure that he looks at the play from every angle. And if he made a mistake, he readily admits to it. We'll correct that mistake next time and get down to it. They said nobody on the Washington Commanders football team digests more plays than Jaden Daniels does. That he's always the first player in the meeting room at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he's the last player to leave, and he analyzes everything that he either does right or he does wrong. What a role model.
I'm going to say this too with LSU. Yeah, we always talked about LSU, like, do you really want to be a quarterback and go to LSU? Well, based on the last two guys that have come out of LSU, and Joe Burrow, a Heisman Trophy winner, won a national championship, and then another Heisman Trophy winner in Jaden Daniels, I'm going to say LSU is starting to flip that script and say, hey, if you're a quarterback, come play at LSU. Why not? I think you got a better chance of being in a higher draft pick and being more pro ready and to be a starter as a rookie coming out of an SEC school. It just shows more.
Good point.
And shows how tough that Southeastern Conference is. Now, I think the Big Ten, certain schools, yes, it shows as well. Hey, come play at Ohio State. Come play at Michigan when they're having a good year. When Nebraska was really good many years ago, unfortunately, they've not been very good for the last decade or so. But when they were on the top of their game, it was like Nebraska, Ohio State, SEC schools, Alabama, LSU, Florida. It was like Georgia. It's like, let's go to one of those schools. You're going to become a pro-ready guy. And starting year one, I mean, you don't see it as much now, depending on where you go. Might get guys that go to smaller schools. Travis Hunter was signed with Florida State and then flipped all of a sudden to go to Jackson State at an HBCU just to play under Dion and learn from Dion. I think that might have benefited him a little bit more because of who his coach was. But I think the experience and the level he could be at would be higher if he learned under somebody else playing at a bigger school like a Florida State and a tougher conference.
Gentlemen, quick question. Did Brady Cook get drafted?
He signed with the Jets as an undrafted
free agent.
He's going to compete to make the squad. And that's why I brought up Brady Cook earlier, because I think when you look at him and Shedeur Sanders, you've got guys with similar resumes, although Brady Cook had a better win-loss record. But you had guys who had disappointing years entering into the draft. One gets drafted because of his last name. The other guy doesn't. Brady Cook had a tougher strength of schedule, had more meaningful wins, and played in a meaningful bowl game. Sanders had none of that.
Well, I would say if he got drafted by the Jets, gentlemen, I would think that he would be good enough to make their practice squad or possibly be the backup there in New York.
Well, and he could be the number 3 guy too. I mean,
and the number 3 guy.
Yeah, I mean, with the Jets, it's hard to say. I don't think Cook is quite NFL ready. His last season showed that. But he's got the arm strength. He's got the tools. And I think, and back to your point, Jim, I think with what you're saying with Jaden Daniels and, what separates him from Shedeur Sanders and some of these other kids coming out, it's simple maturity and the desire to win. I think with the Jaden Daniels, the money is secondary.
He
has the desire to win. And he's going to do whatever he needs to do to win. That shows a sign of maturity. That's what I want to see a player come in. I want to win a Super Bowl. You drafted me to be the starter on this team, to take you to the Super Bowl. I'm going to do that. Now it seems like there's so many players that are, I just want to be a first-round draft pick. I get that huge signing bonus, and whatever happens, happens. You see the same thing in the NBA now. You get all these players that just want their supermax contracts, but then they have to be on a player, workload, and they're not playing. They don't care about the criticism they get because they're just simply getting paid. The NFL is just like that too. But and I agree with Kyle. LSU, you can't argue with what's been the product that has been coming out of LSU. You look at other teams. I mean, you can't really say much about Alabama.
It's a quarterback too.
Yeah,
at LSU.
Right. But you look at like the quarterbacks outside of Tua, although Tua's had his issues. he's played well, but the quarterbacks that have come out of Alabama you don't know how they're going to pan out for the NFL. Now, Alabama can churn out linebackers and defensive end like it's nobody's business, and they tend to churn out running backs pretty well. But yeah, there are certain schools that you can count on for if you're looking for that position player. You start looking at various schools because they're renowned for turning out the top prospects at those given positions. But it's also you look at the programs. You got the SEC schools who are always vying for national championships. So that's putting in that winning culture into these players. Deion didn't have a winning culture. He was just looking to turn around a program, but Deion's all about Deion. And then Deion's all about promoting his son or, other star players on the team. But can you really say he's setting up a winning culture over there or is he just setting up the media hype train? And that's where the immaturity comes. Yeah, you get these kids.
Did he not bask in the limelight when he was being possibly considered to run America's team? What is he not basking and applying the suntan lotion as he was being talked about for the day? And there was no way in heck he knew he was going to coach the Cowboys.
He's a media whore. I mean, that's exactly what he is. He wants to be in the limelight. His playing days are over, so he's going to do what he can do to be in the limelight. That's just who he is. But the problem is that the media eats it up, and then they follow him along because he's an instant story. And now they have to include his son, and they have to include the people that Deion wants him to include because, that's just what they do. They bow to him for whatever reason. And like I said, it sets up this whole cancer environment that, they create these pseudo stories that are not stories. Or they won't talk about what really happened to make his son drop into the 5th round. And that's what's just so annoying.
Is there any doubt in your all's mind that HBO Hard Knocks is already looking at training camp with the Cleveland Browns?
Wouldn't surprise me, although I think they've already done the Browns.
Cal?
I think if they haven't already done it, they're going to be doing it this year with Cleveland. It's just going to be
Is
annoying.
Cleveland eligible? Are they eligible for Hard Knocks? I know they have certain ground rules for teams to follow. Are they eligible to be on Hard Knocks again? Or have they ever been on Hard Knocks?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure.
Because I thought they were when they drafted.
I know you're talking about Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay, yeah.
Yeah, the quarterback.
Baker.
Baker Mayfield. I remember that Hard Knocks. I followed that all the way through to the end with Baker Mayfield. Yes, all the commercials that went with his stardom the first year, he and his wife, and all the wonderful commercials. I'm sure that Cleveland is going to go, assuming he gets through minicamp. We're not guaranteed anything. Apparently, he's looking up at the depth chart. I got to do some work.
You mean Baker or somebody else?
Talking about Sanders. Sanders in Cleveland got to do some work to get up that.
I don't even think that he's capable of even being able to acknowledge that. I think he's walking in assuming he's going to be the day one starter because that's what he has shown us. He is that egotistical.
He's got such an ego.
How could that be possible? You're projected for
your father, and he's feeding you all this delusion, and he's not grounding anybody in reality.
Welcome to the NFL, son.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cal, please.
Look at two players, Abdul Carter and Tyler Warren, both out of Penn State. Two of probably the best prospects we will see in the draft this year, both taken first round. I think the Giants defense has found their leader, and I think that is going to be Abdul Carter. I think Abdul Carter changes the landscape of that New York Giants defense. He still, even playing through a foot injury, that nothing was going to stop him. And look at some of the last guys that have come out of Penn State on the defensive side. One of them, Jim, you mentioned, plays for America's team down in Dallas, and that's Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons has been one of the best defensive end / linebackers since he's got to the league. And he is worth every bit of the money that he has made so far. And I expect nothing less from Abdul Carter. I think Abdul Carter will be just as good, if not better, once he figures out, oh, hey, I play in a pretty weak NFC East that has flip-flopped every year. You just never know who's going to win it. But I think going forward with that Eagles team, I think it's the Eagles division to lose every single year going forward, probably for the next 5 to 6 years, until you might get a sneaky year where Washington plays good football and catches the Eagles and maybe even beats them in Philadelphia and takes a series sweep in the regular season and beats them twice. But I also think Indianapolis, if they can get their quarterback situation figured out, you got a guy in Tyler Warren who's a big guy playing tight end. He has a school record 17 catches in a game this year on the road at USC, one of the most storied college programs in USC. He will put up 17 catches. He can block. And not only that, if you need him to throw a pass, he can do that too. So I think two of the best players that have flown under the radar because of the Shedeur Sanders story is Tyler Warren and Abdul Carter. And I think those two might be very sneaky good this year that are going to compete for some awards in the future or eventually make it to a good team that they're going to win a Super Bowl with. And they're going to be a big reason why because of what they do at their position. But I think a guy that is going to be a game changer is Abdul Carter. There's just no way you stop that guy, especially when he gets going. He's a big guy himself at linebacker, and not to mention he's got one of the best 40 times 4A linebacker this year. So you got a linebacker with size and speed. That defense in New York is going to be tough, I think.
I'm going to close this up here soon on the podcast. I want to get final opinions. Kyle, I will start with you first. How do you see the rest of this Blues Jets series going? What your gut tells you about the next 1 to 3 games, 2 to 3 games in this series. What do we have at the end of this thing?
Well, based off what I've seen with St. Louis is they want to play a physical game. They're going to get 4-line scoring from everybody. They're going to get scoring from the defense. I think Benner's going to show up night in, night out like he has been. He's kept you in games through the first 4. You had a chance to win all 4 of those games. You did in game 3 and 4 in blowout fashion. So I think you're in Hellebuck's head. You're in Winnipeg's head. You proved that whatever line you put out there against Shifley, Iafallo, and Connor can do the job and shut them down. I think the Blues will win this series in 6 games. I think they find a way to bury Connor Hellebuck early and get him yanked, and you go to Comrie. And then I think, with that being said, I think they go Comrie game 6 here in St. Louis just to see what happens. Because I think at that point they know if they get down early in game 6, that crowd has been very energized at Enterprise. So I think if you find a way to win tomorrow night, you come back Friday, Blues close out that series in 6, and then they get ready for round 2, have a couple of days, say, hey, this is what we need to do. We're playing our best hockey right now like we should. And so far, it's going to come down to winning a road game. You got to win a road game at some point in a series. I know that if you start on the road in the next series, if you make it to round 2, you're looking at either going to Colorado or Dallas for games 1 and 2. Game 1, not necessarily a must win. It'd be nice to get that one and then split and then come back and take advantage of home ice for games 3 and 4 and maybe go out to game 5 with a 3-1 lead and have a chance to clinch it. If not, you get one more chance at home before you maybe play game 7. So I truly think the Blues win tomorrow night. I think they come back game 6 and they just put a beat down on Winnipeg that they have in the last 2 home games.
Chris?
I have to agree. Games 1 and 2 in Winnipeg, the Blues allowed Winnipeg to, well, not so much game 1, but definitely game 2. They allowed Winnipeg to steal that game from us. But with the way the Blues have responded to being in an 0-2 hole, they're in Winnipeg's head. They're in Hallebrook's head. Momentum is everything. And one thing I was going to mention when we were talking about the Blues is the whole President's Trophy curse. And in that, Winnipeg had clinched it, and so they didn't play a meaningful game. They had a lot of their players get rest, which in theory is good. The problem is that they didn't have any momentum, where the Blues had to claw and fight their way to get into the playoffs. And this is one of the things I had said, and it's true in every sport. You're the best team in the regular season. That's great. But can you keep that momentum with giving your players a rest, not playing in meaningful games, because you've already wrapped up everything that you needed to wrap up? And they, coming to St. Louis, they allowed the Blues to get back into this because they had no answers for our physicality. They had no answers for the checking. And Hallebrook all of a sudden is getting shelled. And you can see that it's in the back of his mind of, oh crap, here they come. They bottled up Schleffly and Connor. They've done what they needed to do to neutralize the scoring threats. I'm going to say I'm going to agree. It's in 6 because unless Winnipeg flips the script, and as of right now, how they started games 1 and 2, they've regressed in games 3 and 4. How they have not developed an answer for the Blues' 4 physical lines. And I don't know that they're going to have the capabilities of doing that with feeling all of the pressure that we allowed the Blues to get back into this. And, we said this before the playoffs started. Nobody wanted to see that, oh, great, we were playing the Blues. Nobody wanted to play the Blues because of how they ended the regular season. And it's evident. And, yeah, Jim, I'm going to say that, I know just a week ago we weren't looking too hopeful, but now, yeah, I just don't see that Winnipeg gets back in the series because the Blues have all the momentum. They have all the answers on how to beat Winnipeg. As long as the Blues go out there and execute tomorrow and they walk away with that game, I don't see Winnipeg beating us at home. I just don't see it. So, yeah, I'm going to say things.
What'd you think, Al?
I'll add something else. So the thing that's really helped us, too, is we're not taking silly penalties. And when we have been taking penalties, our kill has actually been pretty solid. You slowed them down. And I think that's also been another factor in this series is we're capitalizing on their silly penalties, but they can't capitalize on ours.
Right.
Which has been a complete flip of the script for us from the regular season. We were bottom 3 in the kill this year?
Yeah.
Where now we're playing like it's 2019 and we're saying, hey, we don't care if we're on the penalty kill. We're just getting it out of there because 2019, I'm sure Jets fans are having flashbacks of 2019 and said, oh, great, we got to play the Blues again. We haven't won a series in forever. And not only that, Connor Hellebuck, last 13 postseason games, he's allowed 4 or more and 10 of those. So, I mean, it shows that Hellebuck, a guy who posted a 2.01 goals against average this year in the regular season, had 47 wins for Winnipeg. And then since 22-23, he's posted like a 2.4 goals against average with a 900 plus save percentage. Well, in that same time, in the playoffs, he's 4-9, 4-10, whatever it is, with their goals against him plus well over 4. So I don't understand how Connor Hellebuck all of a sudden just turns into a shell of himself when the postseason. It does not make sense.
It's Connor. It's Connor.
Because if you look on paper, Winnipeg should have swept this series. But that's on paper. There's a reason you play the games. Anything can happen. And Chris, to mention your point, You're the best team in the league. Okay, cool. How are you going to respond? You come out, yeah, we kind of choked game one. Game two, it would have went to overtime if not for that late goal. Anything happens in overtime. Then you come out and come down to St. Louis and you just get mollywopped by a younger, hungrier team.
Kyle, just ask Joe Boo. Just ask Joe Boo what it's all about. Joe Boo will let you know. As Bennington said before, Joe Boo will tell you in his own language what's going on with this team right now. But I would agree, shades of 2019, and I'm going to stay on my projection as well. Blues in 6 games. Again, this sports talk brought to you by Usha's Alterations and Tailoring. It's 314-238-4612. Usha Bishnapuri at gmail.com. Anyway, she's in the Old Commerce Bank building. Her and her husband have made a successful business. It's prom season. 300 to 500 wedding gowns and prom dresses going out right now in the quarter. Next week, Chris, I have Colin Surrey. Colin Surrey will be again in this time slot next week. We enjoyed hammering it out with him over the Cardinals about a month ago. Colin Surrey next week. We'll have a lot to talk about. That series will be over. Hopefully, we'll be talking about the Blues playing in the second round. Kyle Goessler, sir, thank you very much for taking this sports talk on short notice. Pleasure to have you, sir.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It was a blast. And I'm going to say it. Let's go Blues. Let's go Battlehawks.
Let's go Blues.
Let's see if the SC can find a way to score some goals and get some wins. And let's hope the Cardinals can figure it out and start winning.
Let's certainly hope that. Anyway, our sports talk program comes your way Tuesday nights at 7:30 for the Star Lord Chris Pratt, for my special guest Kyle Goessler. It's Mr. Jim signing off for the evening. Again, thanks for joining us here on Sports Talk. We'll be back live at you next Tuesday night at 7:30. This streams on Facebook. I will put a recording on this on Facebook before the evening is over with. We'll be on YouTube by tomorrow. And again, thanks to everybody who joined us for this very long sports talk tonight. Got a lot done, gents. I appreciate it. And we will see you again, special guest Colin Surrey, next Tuesday night. For everybody, this is Mr. Jim saying thanks for joining us for Sports Talk, and we'll see you next week.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks.